Yeah, because otherwise I forget to do it.
Thank you.
We'll just have to sit and watch our little morning greetings here.
So fast over it, yeah.
So is everyone doing okay? Are you enjoying the heat?
Went in the ocean yesterday, which was freezing. My granddaughter and I were going boogie boarding, and neither of us even dove under. It was so cold, the water.
Wow.
Maybe it's because of the contrast with how hot the weather was. I don't know.
Well,
But
it's too early in the season. I usually don't start going in more so women. It takes a while for the ocean to warm up.
it does, yeah. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, later it'll be warmer.
Yeah, more.
I think I'm gonna get a wetsuit also.
But that was a fun adventure you had with your granddaughter.
Oh, I know. She's 12 and just graduated from 6th grade, and so
That's so fun that you're getting to experience that with her. What a bonding thing to go in the ocean together.
Yes, we both love the ocean. So
that's great. What beach did you go to, Barbara?
We were gonna go to Henry's, but by the time we went, it was 1:30, and I was afraid there would be a parking issue. So we just went to Goleta Beach, which is closer to where I am, and it was fine. It was not crowded at all. There was a lot of seaweed in the water, and it was cold, as I said, but it was really nice. I mean, easy parking, not too crowded.
Good. Yeah.
So, yeah, it was good.
Nice. Dolly, are you there? I don't see you, but if you're in the room, I don't see your image in my email.
Oh, there she is. She's just walking around.
Okay.
She's there.
I'll check my spam. Dolly, which email did you send your image to?
She's muted.
You have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Let me see.
Because I'm not seeing it. I'm checking my spam. Yeah, I don't see it. You'll have a better chance of it coming through to my Gmail than you will. For some reason, the pipeline, because I notice that when I send my emails out to you guys, I'll get like 7 bounces that you can't find the email or it doesn't exist or whatever. I don't know what the.
I sent it on the pipeline.
Could you resend it to my Gmail?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, give that a try.
And Carissa, this is Meredith again. Did you get my picture? I sent it to your email.
Yeah, I've got yours all up here.
Thank you.
Carissa?
Yeah.
This is Alice. I just wanted to say that Kurt and I are sharing a computer, but we're both enrolled in the course, so you need to go +1
Thank you.
when you're doing the roll call.
Thank you. I appreciate knowing that. I kind of figured that. Diana and Mary and Dennis and
Morning, Carissa.
Morning.
you guys.
Good.
And Kathy.
Good morning.
And Gina. Here comes Francine.
Hey, sister.
Hi, sister. Sorella.
Hi, Francine.
Hi, Anna. Hi, Mary. Hi, Gina. Morning.
Poor Donna, I got an email from her. She had sprained her ankle, and then I got an email from her and she fell and she fractured her eye and she had to get 26 stitches.
Oh no.
I know, in her face. So poor thing. We need to send some healing vibes to Donna Williams.
Wow.
But she said as soon as she's feeling better, she wants to work on her painting tomorrow or something. So,
oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That'll help the healing.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
I wonder, do we have an address for her? We could send her a card. I don't know if I do.
Yeah, I don't have her address. I have her
Phoebe.
now.
Her husband, Barry, is an eye specialist.
Oh, well, she's in the right hands, isn't she?
Dr.
That's
Barry
cool.
Williams.
Larissa, could you please tell me your Gmail address?
Mine is Larissa Luminous, so it's Carissa Luminess, LUMINESS@gmail.com.
Thank you so much.
A-R-R. I can't see your thing.
Okay, you guys, it's 9 o'clock and we have a good amount of people here. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you and get started with the lesson. And as I go through this, if you have any questions at any time, just unmute yourself and jump in with any questions. So today we're doing the Foothills Mountain lesson. And I actually I'm doing foothills, not mountains. So I'll show you. This is the photograph I used. It was a small image. It was kind of tricky, but sometimes it's actually better because you can use your imagination more. Here's the painting, the final painting I did. Can you see that okay on the screen?
Wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've got a few videos to show you how I got through the process, but I just want to point out, like, they're just really simple shapes. Take a look at the photo again, because this isn't going to be up when I'm doing my demo. I want you to take note of how I've really simplified these shapes here and exaggerated the colors. So I do have the drawing already done on this, which you can't see in the video, but I've just done a simple line drawing to delineate the different layers of hills and also the shapes of the trees and also the shapes within the foothills of the mountains. So that's usually shows, rock versus vegetation. And I'm going to start, probably most watercolor artists actually start with the sky. Traditionally, that's how you do it. But I have more of an inclination to start with the ground up. I think it's just a natural tendency to want to kind of ground myself and really plant myself in the area. So I'm actually going to start with the very most foreground hill, and I put that in before I do the tree shapes. Normally I put in the ground. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing up all the different colors that I see in that foreground hillside, and I'm using the gold is actually some iridescent watercolor gold that I mixed with some gamboge, which is kind of that goldeny color. And then here I'm kind of combining some alizarin crimson and some cadmium red to get that yummy, that I love that red-orange color. And you can see I've got lots of pigment. I'm really saturating my color, and I have nice big puddles of color. I'm using my number 8 brush, my favorite brush. It's my my real sable brush. This is a little bit of burnt sienna I'm putting in, which is, I'm kind of showing it to you here. It's a Daniel Smith burnt sienna. It's kind of a rusty brownish color. And I think that's for the bottom section. So pre-mix all your colors so that when you go to paint, because when you go to put these down, you're going to want to blend them, meaning you're going to have to work them while they're still wet. And if you start painting one color before you have your other colors ready to go, you know, you're not really going to have time to mix the colors and lay it down and still have it bleed. So I'm laying down my gold with the gamboge along the top edge of that hillside. I'm just going to cut it straight across. And you can see every time I dip, first I dip in the water, and then I actually am grabbing more color as I go because I want to keep that saturation. If I just dipped it in the water and then into my puddle of color, it will gradually dilute it and make it less strong. So every time, you know, I keep adding more pigment. And now I'm going to go around. Why is this thing? I don't know why this thing isn't going away. Oh, there we go.
Carissa,
Yeah.
can you just say a little something
About the what? You guys.
about the process of selecting the colors for the palette? How much of the coloration of this final product have you seen in your mind as you begin the whole process at the outset?
First of all, I only work with one shape at a time. So I really, let me just say first before I answer that question, I'm adding some of this kind of muted yellow green to the blend. But when I paint, I'm not really looking, I mean, I get kind of like a real general feel for the finished painting in a way in my mind, but I'm not thinking about the other shapes in this painting. I am only concerning myself with what I'm doing here and now. And that's where the power is. That's where the power lies in painting and in life, is really being present in the now, in the current moment, instead of mentally jumping ahead to the next thing or to the whole picture or to the final outcome. You really want to stay in your process and stay centered with what is exactly in front of you right now and what you're doing. So what I did mentally was I broke it down, this one shape, I broke it down into, okay, I see gold along the top, and then it blends into a little bit of green, and then it drops down into this reddish color. So those are my three main colors, but they're not all evenly, equally distributed. The green is a much narrower band of color, and the red is much wider. I'm dropping in a little more green. I wanted it to, you know, to be a little more blended in and natural looking. And it's still wet enough that it took the color. The nice thing about going back in and adding color is when you do that, you know, this area of paint is different levels of wetness. And so it's going to take the paint differently, which is good. It makes it more natural and not all like totally smooth and even, unless that's the style that you're going after. But I like to have, you know, my work is you know, I would classify my work as kind of stylized realism. So if you wanted to push the realism, you would not simplify so much, really. And if you wanted to push the stylization, you would want to simplify it more. And I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. But each one of you is going to have your own aesthetic, is going to have your own way of mixing and applying the colors, and have your own thought process about it. So again, my job as the teacher is to just try to help guide you towards finding your own voice and your own style. And if you're just starting out, the best way to do that is to experiment with a lot of different ways of doing this. And even as advanced students, like I know last week Francine, who's been painting for decades, sent me 3 paintings that she called experiments. So she's been painting all this time, but she's still experimenting. She's still exploring new ways. And that's really important. So here I am, I'm dropping in a little bit more to kind of naturalize it a little bit, you know, to give it just a little more interest. And I'm going back and forth between my 2 brushes, my number 8 and my number 12. Bringing a little bit of that green down here, which is the opposite of red. So it's gonna kind of neutralize it a bit. Also, I had some kind of funky texture with that red, the way the brush was laying it down. It's funny, the paint handles, depending on the pigment that you're using, you know, it lays down differently. So sometimes you have to kind of fudge with it a little bit. Putting more green in. I'm wanting to darken that bottom area and also deal with that funny texture of the brush. So by adding some green, it makes it a little more opaque and kind of covers that up. Dropping in some more gold at the top. You know, when you put it down, sometimes, you know, you look at it and you can see, oh, this needs more of that color or whatever. Like I could see, yeah, this needed some more gold along the top. I wanted to really exaggerate that and make that strong. And then here I'm dropping in a little bit of a darker burnt sienna around the edge of the shadow.
Carissa, which gold did you say that was the iridescent gold?
I'm combining the iridescent gold with gamboge.
Ah, it's beautiful. It's warm.
Yeah, it's really warm. It's the golden hills of Southern California, right?
Carissa, can you move the video slightly to the right?
To the right? Yeah. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can never tell them on my screen. Okay, so now I'm going up, I'm skipping a hill. I'm skipping these 2 hills in the middle because I need to go up to a hill that's not touching this one because I want to retain this hard edge, which means it needs to dry. But that doesn't mean I have to stop painting. I can just find an area that's not touching it and move up to it. And what I want to point out is that as you go farther back into the distance, you're going to want to mute your colors a little bit more because the brighter colors are going to be in the foreground. And as they go back in space, the land becomes more muted. It's just the visual, the way our eyes work. You know, we don't see them, they just fade out. They kind of mute out. So what I did, you know, I took my gold, but I added a little bit of cobalt violet to it to tone it down. And then I'm putting in, move this over so you can see the hill that I'm working on. This one in the photograph, and you can see the edge of the photo. There's a bunch of trees in here. So I got that, you know, I kind of just simplified these greens of the trees and tried to get some textural effect. But I didn't go in and put in each individual tree. You know, I just really kept it simplified. And here's a darker green. And notice I'm mixing my greens, adding some brown to it to tone it down. Some of it's brown.
Slumping.
Somebody needs to turn on their mute.
Yeah.
I'm hearing whispers.
Yeah, I'm trying to find them to mute them. I don't see anybody who's not muted. Looks like everybody's muted. So yeah, and I do want you to notice how dense my greens are. Don't make your greens really wispy and see-through, you know, transparent. They are really, as I've said before, they contain chlorophyll, which gives them a lot of substance and density. So here I'm going to start creating my texture of trees by leaving little separated areas of white. Here I'm dropping in some of the kind of muted violet in there. So I'm breaking it down more. It's less kind of simplified. I'm breaking it down into smaller shapes, but they're still painted damp so that they're blending. And you know, you'll notice with these hill shapes, I do go from top to bottom. Generally, I think I always do it that way. Start at the top and work at the bottom. But again, you know, whatever makes sense to you, whatever your natural inclination is, you should follow that. Here I'm going with a really deep blue. It's my phthalo blue again, that really deep, cool blue. Toned it down a little, but dropping it along the bottom. You know, you do want to kind of ground things at the bottom. The trees are darker at the bottom. The hills are darker at the bottom. The mountains are darker at the bottom. Everything's always darker at the bottom. You really want to ground it. And then I had left those little white specks and I'm dropping the green in to kind of indicate, you know, vegetation. So there's my second hill completed. See, I just want to see how much time I have left on this video. I have 4 minutes left on this. Are you guys okay to keep going, or do you want me to move on to the next one? Have you had enough of this, or?
No, keep going, please.
Keep going.
Okay. I know I had a request, you know, people are really interested in mixing colors. So you're getting lots of chance to see how I mix my colors. So here I've got a dark green. I added some red to it to make it brown. Some more dark blue. I'm getting a really dark, rich brown, and I'm not sure what it's for yet. The other thing is, you know, you can see how I have, in general, my warm colors are in one palette, and my cooler colors are in another palette. And normally, I wouldn't have my palettes up above my painting like that. See, I've actually got 3 palettes. And I'm wanting a color in that one, it looks like. Normally, I would not have my palettes above my painting because it's really kind of a pain in the butt to reach out like that, but I'm doing that so they'll fit into the video. Be mindful about placing your palettes. You know, if you are right-handed, put them on the right side of your painting and have them really have your station set up in a very orderly, organized, efficient way so that you can go back and forth. Because you can see how much time, look how much time I'm spending mixing up my colors and getting just the right shade. And I'm not sure what I'm trying to do here, but I'm getting a really deep violety brown. We'll see where this is going to go. Maybe I'm going up to, well, I don't know. See where I'm going to go.
Suspenseful.
Yeah. So I'm going up, see, I'm going up to one higher up and in the distance. And okay, so I think I'm laying in these shapes over here. And I'm painting around the trees. I've got, do you notice how the trees, there are these shapes that get smaller as they go back? Do you see how in the finished painting, how I have these same kind of tree shapes and they go back and they get smaller? So that kind of shows the scale, that it helps get that perspective going back. And then, so I'm not sure what, oh, I think I'm doing this area on the far left over here of the painting. You could see these shapes. So yeah, if you look at the foothills, they do have these shapes in them. And like I said before, it just distinguishes the different kinds of, like I'm not a geologist, but the different kind of rocks and or vegetation on the hills. So, and I like to really simplify and exaggerate those too. So that was just a corner of this hill right here. See this in the far edge? And how I have this dark purple at the bottom, and then along the ridge, I had that kind of browny gold. So you can see that here. So even within the shape of one color, I have a blend. Okay, so that's the end of that video. And I've actually got two more. I hope this isn't too terribly boring, but this is what we're here for, right?
I'd love to see how you do those distant mountains. They look like abalone. The way the colors fade into each other.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I included that. So I'm mixing up some gold. I'm muting some gold. So I think I'm going to be going up. I've let this dry, you know, it's dried. And now I'm coming up to another hill and doing kind of, so each hill has a slightly different version of that gold along the top. This one is kind of, it's in between the one on the bottom and the one on the right. So it's kind of got a little bit more of the gold that's in the foreground, but I added some of the cobalt violet to mute it down. I'm putting in some gamboge to kind of brighten it up. I'm having some transitions within the gold. And this one is not quite such a regular band of blends like that's in the bottom one. I kind of broke up the space a little bit more because that's how the hillside was in the photo. Putting in some green here. And some kind of rusty orange. So I'm using all the same colors but slightly different versions of them and a little more muted. I'm going to see if I can just skip forward a little bit. Dropping in some of the dark. Notice every time I dip in the water, I dip into the paint. I keep those puddles really juicy and saturated. And lots of different colors in my palette, lots of different greens.
Carissa, when you dip into the water and then into the paint, are you not continuously diluting the puddle of paint?
Well, that's why I usually grab some more pigment out of the color too. If you watch me mix, I will grab, let's see what I do next, but I'll usually dip in the puddle, but I'll grab, okay, dip in the water, dip in the puddle. Okay, I didn't on that one because that was pretty saturated. But dip in the water, dip in the color. There's still a good amount of, you can see there's still a good amount of pigment in there. But I will often add a little more paint to the puddle to keep it going. But you could see how dark this paint is still. It's not getting diluted yet. Water, and this one's really dark. I definitely don't have to dilute this one down. Mixing in some red with it. And then I'm painting, you can see I painted in between the tree shapes a little bit. So you can see I'm leaving the tree shapes and the shadows. Okay. Here's some more up in the mountains. So now I'm doing the next mountain range in front of this one. So it's still just as dark, but it's got it's a little less grayed down. It's got slightly more of the purple color in it. And again, I'm going to include some of my golden color along the top of the ridge. So, you know, sometimes in the mountains, the shapes are very clearly delineated like this, but other times there you can see the blend of gold I have in the violet up here. Sometimes they do merge more. So you could see this, this more of a kind of a golden top along the ridge. And then let's see if I'm going to do the abalone or not. I'm not sure if that's in this video. I think I might just be doing the I'm adding some of our favorite periwinkle to this other mountain, which is going to change it even. It's going to lighten it up a little bit more. See how dark and saturated that area is? So you want to have blends within your shapes in general. You can, if you made your shapes all the same, you know, density and color, what you'll end up with is more like flat shapes, which can be really, you know, some painters paint like that intentionally, and that can be a really nice look if you just want to flatten everything out. I'm thinking that one of our new students, I think your name is Alfredo, is that right? He sent me some images today that I want to show how that could be an alternative possibility.
Now, the mountains that you're painting right now in the video look much lighter in the final painting.
Well, the paint does dry lighter, but also it just could be the lighting of where I photographed the final piece versus the lighting when I was painting it. But the watercolor will dry, you know, wet paint is always darker than dry paint. Oh, yes, Alberto. Did I say Alfredo? Alberto, excuse me. And now here I'm going down to the second hill and putting in the, so let's see if I have any more. Putting in the green. So it, you know, it's kind of, you know, I guess this is a little bit methodical. There is a method to it. It's kind of, but if you can kind of break it down like this into just putting in your shapes and doing your blends. Okay, that's the end of that one.
Carissa,
Yeah.
did you sketch all the little trees and hills before?
I drew like all the shapes. The shape of this hill is drawn. The shape of these trees is drawn. The shape of the shadows. But within these, there's nothing drawn. But all these shapes that I'm painting are all done with a pencil. Yeah, it's important to have that done. Okay, and I'm sorry I didn't show painting the other abalone shapes up here. I think I'm just going to show the sky in this one. So I can see I have different clothes on, so this is probably the following day. So, you know, I didn't do this all in one sitting. I did it in a couple of 2 or 3 sittings, and I'm going to do my sky first. So I'm dipping into my, once again, my ultramarine and my cobalt, and testing my color, and I want to get the right color. And I'm using a number 12, but I probably could have used a larger brush for this sky. And the sky, you know, I'm having it be darker. It's darker at the top, and then there's some clouds in here. Let me see if I can bring up the photo again. Where did that go? There.
And the paper's not wet, right?
Right, it's not wet. You could do it wet, but I did it dry. You have to just work rapidly and use a big brush and lots of water. I'm putting lots of water down on this baby. And I'm doing kind of a, yeah, it's a blend from dark to light by just adding water, but I'm still dipping into my paint because I want a fair amount of pigment. But you can see how it's getting lighter.
Is that the San Marcos Reserve?
This is the Sedgwick Preserve. I've done paintings at the San Marcos Preserve. It's a really similar look. It's really similar hills up there. So getting more water down here. So this is pretty wet, you know, pretty darn wet. And then when I get to the mountain, you can see I just trace around it with my brush. No problem painting around the shapes. So I got my tissue and I'm blotting out the clouds. So this is one way to get really soft clouds. And I do recommend, you can use paper towels, but if you have tissue or toilet paper, it's a little bit softer. And I put this in, and this is one option, but I actually, well, I'll show you. I'm just gonna kind of continue blotting out. And I'm going by the clouds in the photo. You know, and when you do this, you get most of the pigment up, but some of it stays in there, which is what you want. You don't want your clouds totally the white of the paper. And then I'm kind of graying out. I'm going to get a darker, more grayed out version of my blue. And I'm going to drop it into the bottom of the cloud shapes. Do you see how the clouds are darker along the bottom? So I'm dropping this in. And it's still wet. And also there's little peaks between the clouds, there's little peaks of a brighter blue. So I'm kind of dropping that back in to the areas where I blotted it. I'm putting in some water and blotting again. So it's kind of like this working and reworking process with the clouds. Kind of just trying to soften those edges a little bit. I don't want hard edges in my sky. You know, some people do, but that's just, it doesn't really go with my look. So, and the thing about doing a sky with clouds is, you know, it has to kind of go with the land. It has to somehow be in harmony with the land. And like this sky, as it is with the blotting, probably would have been okay on its own in a different painting, but you'll see I ended up wanting to change it because it wasn't really, it was too distinctly separate. The look of it wasn't really going with the land for me, so you'll see what I do. But I want to show you that this is a way to get these kind of cloud shapes, you know, and you don't have to, what I did was came back in and softened them more. But you don't have to, you can keep them these kind of, you know, defined shapes. But I think what happened for my eye is that the sky was becoming a little bit, it was kind of competing with the land. And I don't want that to be the main attention or focus. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the sky is your main, thing that you're wanting to portray. But for me, it's about these foothills. And the sky is just the supporting actor. And I'm putting in some more of that bright blue, because if you look at the photo, there's some of that bright blue peeking through again. So I'm dropping that in. And if you keep working it and keep adding water, it buys you time to continue adjusting with your blends.
Can you remind me, please, what the color blues were that you started with initially?
I like to combine ultramarine and cobalt. Sometimes it's called French ultramarine, but the ultramarine, they're both kind of bright.
Thank you.
Sure. So here I thought, okay, well, is this done? I'm taking a minute to look at it. And I'm going to realize, it's just not really quite what I want. But I'm taking a minute here to look at it and get my bearings and kind of get my plan. I'm blotting. There's a little bit of a bloom happening. A bloom is when you add a pretty wet area and it bumps up against a more pigmented area, and it creates this texture which is called a bloom. So you can blot that if you can get it in time. And I'm going back to my bigger brush, dipping into the cobalt and my ultramarine. See, now I'm getting more pigment again. I'm wanting to darken it, so I'm going to do another layer. I think I'm going to do what I decided, I'm doing, this is my underpainting, so this is going to still be here. This will show through, but that's my underpainting, and now I'm going to do a whole nother layer of an overpainting to kind of give it a consistent, more subtle layer. And I think it was Kurt last week who had this guide that he did with the little brush. This is what I was trying to suggest you do, is to get a big brush and paint over the whole thing with another layer of color to unify it,
This is very helpful to see this. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And there's not too much longer. We've got just another 4 minutes or so. So hang in there, you guys.
That's what I was wondering, if you ever use a bigger brush, because to me, this is a small brush.
Yeah,
I usually use a really big brush.
I do have a larger brush, but I think I went with this brush because I wanted to make a lot of changes as I go, I didn't want it to be just one bold stroke or one large area. I wanted all these subtle changes. So if that's what if that's what you're going for, you'll kind of be forced to do that with a bit of a smaller brush. And I'm dropping my darks in here too, because you don't want it to be too contrasty. And then I'll get there, I promise. You're basically, this video today, which has been going for 45 minutes or so, you basically have seen me do most of the whole painting. Well, I guess I didn't show the trees, did I? I thought I had filmed the trees. So now what I'm doing, I decided I wanted to soften my clouds. So I'm just taking some water and I'm putting a layer of water around my whole cloud forms. And do you see how it softens the edge into the sky? And then you can still blot to make it lighter, but I want you to note how you can soften your edges if you want a softer look to your cloud. So this is another option for getting, you know, a different type of a cloud look. Do you see the difference there between those clouds?
Yes.
I'll just show a little tiny bit more of this and then we'll move on.
I have a question about your near trees.
Okay.
On the green edges, the borders of the trees, there's a darkish edge, but it doesn't look like it's your pencil. It looks like it's the paint.
Yeah, it is the paint. So this is just a byproduct of the way I paint, is that when I paint one shape next to another one, where there's two edges slightly overlap or meet, it just creates a dark edge.
I didn't know if that was overlapping or if the paint sort of runs to the edge. And
it kind of runs to the edge, but it's slightly, like it meets the edge, but it kind of just slightly, they meet enough where they overlap and create a darker edge.
It's really pretty.
Thank you. Yeah, I get a lot of comments on that, and that's just been a totally unintentional, you know, effect of the way I approach it. So you see the idea here with the clouds, right? How I soften the edges. So I'm just, before I stop the screen share, I just want to get the final painting up so you can look at it again. And do you see how changing the sky, I still have these clouds, but they're much more subtle. It's less of that stronger shape of contrast, so that it's just kind of a nice backdrop to my hills, but it's not competing, it's not detracting. Is that clear, you guys? And then I didn't really show the trees or the shadows, but I just want you to notice, you know, I have these dark shadows of these trees. Within the shadow, there's even different colors. There's purple, there's kind of this blue, and then this orange in the middle. And then again, the trees, you know, they tend to be darker along the bottom and usually around an edge to give a sense of light. So, but you know, I don't actually usually work with light very much. Mine are kind of flattened out, really, the way I paint. Like I said, it's that borderline between stylization and realism. So to be really more realistic, you would have, you know, more subtleties and light coming in and that type of thing. And to be even more stylized, these colors would be flattened out. So I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, where there's an indication of light and shadow and an indication of, you know, subtlety, but it's so simplified and exaggerated that it's kind of going into stylization. Okay, so I'm gonna stop our share and come back and see all you beautiful faces. I have more people on now than we started. And let's just take a really short break, and then we'll come back, and I've got some paintings from you guys to share. Okay? Just take a really quick break here.
Hi, Karen. Unmute yourself. You're muted. You're muted right now, but it's good to see you. Are you feeling okay? Making progress.
Hi, Karen.
It's Linda.
I
Karen,
can't hear you either. Your mute's on.
you have to go down to the little microphone.
There we
Good
go.
to see you.
Now you can talk.
Where is the little microphone?
Well, that's right.
No, we found it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Somebody did
good.
it for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you painting, Karen?
She's doodling.
I'm doing some little sketches from memory.
Oh, good.
It's so nice to see you, Karen.
Oh,
Simi
good
here.
to see you, Simi.
Hi.
My dad would choose a cloudy, windy day where the clouds were really dramatic, and he liked to have them in his photos.
Oh.
You'll
So
have to try that.
there's some up there, yes.
That's where you inherited your talent from your dad?
Not yet. Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, there's one of her beautiful.
Oh, that's pretty.
Here's something she did in the past.
What?
Very pretty.
I'm just showing.
Wow, look at those clouds.
Wow.
Oh
There.
dear,
That's
what
beautiful,
happened?
Karen.
Yeah.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Hi.
Those are clouds.
That's wonderful to see everyone. Yeah.
Yes, it's nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Hebgen Lake, great for trout fishing. And the fisherman is my dad. I think my mother took the picture. Yeah, so there we are. Great place.
Those are dramatic clouds,
They are.
just the way he would have wanted them.
You're right, yes. The weather gets pretty noisy sometimes. Booming and crashing.
Where is that lake?
Where is it?
Yes.
It's near West Yellowstone, Montana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Big sky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
It's wonderful. There are moose wandering around and plenty of wildlife.
One of my favorite places for sure. It's like
yeah.
incredible if you've never been there.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I would go back in a heartbeat. It's a beautiful place. And there she is.
Okay. Are you guys all back?
We've just been chatting with Karen.
Good. I know. It's so good to have you back with us, Karen.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, she's kind of the master of clouds. If you want to learn good cloud paintings, you need to look at Karen's.
Oh,
really good at that.
Look at that beach one.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I'm gonna